Hello for the third day in a row. I'm back with another video. This is Jennifer and I'm glad you're here. Now, over the years, I've found a few tips and tricks and hacks that really help to get great results with heat embossing. I've shared a few along the way in different videos, but I thought it'd be good to share a bunch of them together in one video. These are easy things you can do to get better results with your heat embossing. While we make these 4 bold cards, I will have some other tips for you, and I'm hoping that it's helpful. Okay, so the 2 products that I'm really focusing on in this video are the new Simon Says Stamp Fab Flower Plate and then the Fab Flowers. So these are sold separately and they can be used separately or together. I will be doing both. The reason I chose to use these products is because I could immediately think of several ways to use them, especially that background die. When I'm trying to decide what to purchase, that's a trick that I also use. I try to think of 5 creative ways I can use that product before I invest in it. Now I'm going to just share a few ideas today, but this background could be used for die cut inlay, shaker cards, stained glass window, and much more. It's just a good all-around die. I also chose a bunch of bold color cardstocks and I die cut circles from them. I have lots ready to go. I'm gluing these circles to the back of this white die cut. That way the color shows through for each of the flowers. I thought adding a circle here would be the easiest way to do this, but you could also use the flower die that I showed you earlier, but that takes a little more time to line up in the back. The circle you just pop in place. I'm using Gina liquid adhesive. This is Connect liquid adhesive in a fine tip bottle. This will hold tight and I don't have to worry about it coming undone. So a little goes a long way. I like to put something heavy on it while it dries, and that is that countertop block, a sample block that one of my readers sent me. It's really helpful. Anything heavyweight to hold it in place is always a good thing to have. So I continued to add colored circles to the back, and when we flip this over, we'll have all these color flowers showing through. I now can use some scissors to cut any of the excess hanging off. I like to use long scissors for this. It's really easy to cut right along the white die cut edge. All right, now I did die cut another one, and I'm gluing that right on top of the last one, just so that white has more dimension and the flowers sit back a little bit. You can do a third die cut if you want to. I like stacking die cuts, but it's totally up to you. You'll notice I also did another one here with blue and green circles on the back. After I was done with that, I trimmed off the excess, and then I'll glue 2 more white die cuts on top of that too. So I just wanted to make 2 backgrounds, but I'll finish the design off a little bit different. This is one of my favorite things to do, to make multiple cards at once. That way I can experiment and learn more, and I have more cards to give to recipients. These backgrounds are 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I'm gluing them onto a white note card of the same size. Be sure to use a strong liquid adhesive here or double-sided tape. You want to make sure your card panel stays in place. Next up, we get to add these gold flowers, those outline gold flowers. They're very dainty, so I thought I'd share with you the way I like to add die cuts like this. I'm using Simon Says Stamp Gold Matte Cardstock, which is a favorite of mine, and I'm putting on the back of that cardstock some double-sided adhesive. This is from Altenew. Now, when we go to die cut from this gold cardstock, the adhesive will already be on the back, and the die has no problem cutting through these layers. So after we die cut, what we end up with are little like gold flower stickers. You just peel the back off, and then you can add it to your card wherever you want. I really also like this adhesive because you can move it around till you're happy and then press it in place. Once I'm happy with the position, I take that leftover release paper that we just peeled off of the adhesive, and I lay that on top, and then I rub over it with my bone folder. That presses it down. By putting that release paper on top, I don't have to worry about the bone folder catching the corner or edge of that delicate die cut and messing it up. It's just giving me a smooth surface to apply the pressure. On the card on the left, I'm doing the gold die cut offset from the flower behind it. On the right, I'm lining it up just to get 2 different looks. Now for that card on the right, you'll notice some of the gold hangs off. And I first was using a craft knife to just press a cut into the gold and then taking away the extra. And this was working fine, but then it started getting very tedious and I wasn't really liking the look of it. This is a good reminder that you can change gears as you go. And if you're not happy with how something's looking, cover it up. That's always the best solution. If you get an inky fingerprint somewhere, cover it up with an embellishment. If you get a die cut edge here, like I'm getting, that doesn't look so good, I'm going to cover it up. So the way I did that is I just cut a simple white frame to put around the outside edge here. I have a white cardstock piece that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I took a basic rectangle die that's slightly smaller, and I'm taping it right in the center. Here's another tip. When you run this through your die cut machine, I do encourage you to put it on the plates at a bit of an angle. Whenever you have straight edges, like this rectangle die, it's best to send them through at an angle instead of straight on into your machine. It prevents warping of plates and gives a better, crisp shape. Now I have a nice white frame that I can add to the front of my card to cover up the edges of those gold die cuts. Now I could have put all the die cuts on and just cut right up close to the edge, but I like that white border look. So sometimes if you just take a few more minutes of effort, you'll be happier with the results in the end, especially if you're not liking how something looks. Come up with a way to cover it up to get better results. Now it's time to do some heat embossing and share a few simple tips with you. Now I'm doing black heat embossed images here. Whenever I want a black heat embossed image, I instead use a black pigment ink and clear heat emboss. I find black embossing powder hard to deal with, so I think it's best to do the black ink with the clear powder instead. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool, but you could definitely use an acrylic block instead. I have white cardstock in my stamping tool, and I'm using my anti-static powder tool that is always very helpful when heat embossing to get nice crisp images. I'm stamping with Altenew Obsidian black ink, which is a crisp black pigment ink. So after I stamp this, it will be wet, which is what we want when we do heat embossing, because we want to be able to shake on powder and it'll hold it in place. If you do not have black pigment ink, you could instead stamp the image with black ink, any kind of black ink, and then stamp right on top of it again with clear ink, and that'll make it sticky, and then you can add your clear embossing powder. So here I've added my powder. I'll talk more about that later, but I first wanted to talk to you about the 2 different ways that you can heat up your images. First, give your heat gun a little bit of time to warm up, maybe 30 seconds or so. Then if you want your embossing powder to look a little bit smoother, then heat from the back side of the cardstock. You'll see that the heat will cause the powder to melt and give slightly smoother results than if you heat from the front of the paper. This does take longer, and that's why I don't usually do it. But if you have a focal point, solid image like this one that you want to be smooth, it's definitely worth the time. Now this one I'm going to heat from the front so that I can do a comparison between the 2 different versions. So Thank You, I heat from the front and it's a little more bumpy. Thinking of You, I heat from behind and it's a little smoother. It's hard to see in the video, but it is more noticeable in real life. And I'll show you some more examples. So now I'm going to go ahead and heat up the rest of these 2 from the back side because I do find that does give smoother results. Notice that I'm doing extra sentiments. I had the cardstock, I had my MISTI set up, I might as well just go ahead and make extras to save for later. And a reminder, once you see that the powder turns shiny, don't heat it anymore or you'll overheat the powder. All right, now here is the best way to get a super smooth image, and that is to put your heat embossed image back into your stamping tool and stamp right on top of the embossing again. This time I'm just using clear Versamark ink. This will put sticky ink on top of your heat embossing you've already done, and now you can add on another layer of embossing powder. This will double up the layers and then give you much smoother results. You don't even need to heat from the other side. This will also give more shine and give more dimension. Here's a comparison. The one on the top, I did 2 layers. The one on the bottom, I did 1 layer. You can see the top has a domed look that's smooth. The bottom kind of is dimply looking, kind of like orange peel. So if you want to take the time, you can do that. Again, here's a side-by-side comparison. And you could even put on more layers of embossing powder if you want. I usually do only 2, sometimes 3. And in these examples, the one on the left has multiple layers, the one on the right is 1 layer. Much smoother results. I do have some more heat embossing hacks for you, but first let's finish up these two cards. I wanted to show you a great way to save in your craft room, and that is to use leftover packaging to create dimension behind your die cuts. I have this package from a stamp set. I put mine into different pockets, so this would normally go in the trash can. I don't like to do that, so what I do is I save these and I'll die cut from these often. These will be die cuts that won't be seen. They'll get glued behind my main die cut to give it dimension. This is so much better than using foam tape and will make our die cuts stronger, so it'll go through the mail nicer. Now in this case, there's a pretty blue shine to part of the packaging, so I probably should have used that on a project, but I just wanted to show you any kind of cardboard or heavyweight packaging is great for this. You could use cereal boxes, you can use kids' folders, anything on hand that you don't need anymore. But stamp packaging is great for it. So I glued 2 or 3 of those die cuts behind our heat embossed die cut. And look how nice and thick this is. No one will ever know that there is packaging back there. At this point, I decided I wanted Miss You on a die cut circle for this particular card. And I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you another way to do layered embossing powder. So here I have stamped Miss You with the black pigment ink and sprinkled on the clear embossing powder, and I've heat set it. While it's still hot, I will immediately go and sprinkle on more clear embossing powder. The melted embossing powder already on our cardstock will grab hold of the powder we put on top, and we can heat set it again. This gives us 2 layers of clear embossing. You could even do a third this way. Now in this situation, you have to move pretty quick. You want to put the second layer of powder on top of the melted hot powder. The way I showed you before allows you to have some time to let it cool and then stamp on it with Versamark ink and add another layer. Both options work really well. After I die cut this into a circle, I noticed there was this little bit of black ink where I didn't want it. My trick is to use a craft knife to just softly scratch the surface of the paper. That usually does the trick. I'd also thought here I'd demonstrate something you can do with white embossing powder. I'm not actually using this on a card, I just wanted to demonstrate. I white heat embossed here. I only did 1 layer of powder, and you'll notice that there are some areas that didn't heat emboss well. I did that intentionally to demonstrate this. And some of the pink was kind of showing through. One really easy trick that you can do is use a white gel pen. You can fill in any areas that didn't heat emboss well and also kind of smooth out the result. Now normally I would do 2 layers of white embossing powder for this, but I wanted to show you that you can use a white gel pen to make it look better. Okay, back to our cards. Here are the 2 completed cards. I did pick matching envelopes. Simon Says Stamp has great matching envelopes, which really pulls everything together. I also added some gold bauble gemstones at the center of the flowers for a little bit of shine. You can see how smooth our heat embossed images are, and they stand out against the bold color. Now for the next card, I thought I would take the opportunity to show you a tip for heat embossing that makes a pretty big difference in the final result, and I'm not sure I've talked about it in a video. And this is how you apply the powder to your embossing ink. For this card, I wanted to make some glossy cardstock with embossing. So I have a piece of cardstock here, and I'm pressing my Versamark ink directly onto it. This works if you use a stamped image also. Now, oftentimes when people go to sprinkle on their embossing powder, they hold the paper kind of standing up like this, and they shake the powder on. But notice this doesn't give great coverage. What's better to do is lay your cardstock kind of flat. This is one of the reasons I like to work over a container or a coffee filter. You can lay your cardstock flat, then put your embossing powder on it, and look at how much more coverage you get. So let me demonstrate that again. I'm pressing Versamark ink here. You could also just stamp an image. Instead of holding your cardstock kind of standing up like this to apply the powder, hold it flat and shake the powder on it, covering all of the surface. This allows more powder to get into all of the areas to give you crisper results. This is one of the reasons I switched to using that triangle tray to pour my embossing powder onto my surface. That way I get as much powder as possible over all of it. So by holding the paper flat instead of standing up, you get better coverage. And here, once again, I'm heating from behind and from the front to show you the difference. On the left, you can see that orange peel look that you get when you heat from the front, and it's much smoother over on the right. So I will heat set all of this embossing powder on this one and on my other piece, and also do this with some green and yellow cardstock too. I know a lot of these embossing tips seem small, but they really all do add up to getting better results. So when I do this heat embossing on my cardstock, it makes the cardstock darker and it makes it glossy. I die cut a small circle from that, and now I have these 3 colors of cardstock. One I use light peach, one I use medium peach, and then that last smallest circle is the medium peach cardstock with the clear embossing on it. So I die cut a bunch of circles and I'm gluing them together so we have the lightest, the medium, and that dark glossy one on top. I created these of the different colors, and these will get glued behind the flowers on that flower die cut over on the right. Last time we used solid circles, this time I'm using layering circles. Really, this is just a stepped up version of the blue and green card I showed you before. And what's cool is that darkest color with the gloss is shiny there at the center of the flower. So I'll continue to add these circles onto the back, and once I've glued them all in place, I will trim the excess off of the sides as we did before, and glue a couple extra white background die cuts on top for dimension. I then glued this onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white note card and added a Love You circle die cut at the center. For a little more shine, I added an iridescent bauble right at the center of each of the flowers. And when you look closely, you can see the shine that the embossing powder gives you at the center of the flowers and on that sentiment. I did do multiple layers of embossing on the sentiment so it stands out nicely. I do have one more card for you. It's a quick one. It doesn't have heat embossing, but I wanted to include it because it uses the same products. To create this card, I die cut 2 white flowers and 1 soft colored flower and glued them together for stacked dimension. I then took a darker flower of the same color, and I took a circle die and cut a circle right at the center of the flower. So I'm placing that circle right at the center, and I'll run it through my die cut machine. This cuts the edges of the petals off, making like a smaller flower center, and I'll glue that onto the lighter color one. This gives me a 2-tone flower. I did a trick similar to this in one of my last videos where I created a layered leaf by doing this. I'll link to that video up here on the top right. I then took one of my gold die cuts that has the sticky on the back of it already and placed that right on top for a finished look. Okay, now to position all of these flowers on my card, I could have measured it out, but I'm going to show you another trick. I'm using this Simon Says Stamp embossing folder that has a great pattern to it. A lot of embossing folders do, stencils do too, even background stamps. I have a piece of white cardstock that I'm adding a little moisture to and then putting into this 3D embossing folder. For a sandwich on this, I use the A platform, the F shim, the B platform, and then the embossing folder with nothing on top. If you want to, you can do it again, but put a cardstock shim in there for a little more pressure. This is the Spellbinders Universal Plate System, which I use now. It is fantastic. However, if you have the platforms that come with your Platinum machine, they do have sandwich instructions over on the Simon Says Stamp website and for other die cut machines too. So that beautiful textured background has a pattern to it, and I'm gluing my flowers into that pattern. Instead of measuring and drawing lines, I'm just gluing them kind of right centered between some of the diamonds the background creates, and that way I know I'll have the spacing just right. This is a big time saver. You could also use a background stamp that has a pattern to it. You could also use a stencil that has a pattern to it. And this just really allows you to save some time. So now I have all my flowers placed nicely, spaced evenly. For sentiment, I'm using the Simon Says Stamp BU sentiment strips. I just cut out a sentiment from this and I've glued it right on top of the flowers at the center of my card. I did also add a gold sequin at the center of each flower just to make it catch the light. So when I hold this up closer to the camera, you can see that texture in the background from the embossing folder and how the flowers kind of fit into the pattern, allowing them to all line up nicely. And here you can also get a closer look at how I use that circle die to make the darker part of the flower. It's just a fun way to get a layered look with only really 2 small dies. Okay, I hope today's video inspired you, and I hope that the small tips that I gave you for heat embossing are helpful. If you are interested in these supplies, I linked them below in my YouTube description. You can also go to my blog where you can bookmark cards and videos for future reference. At the end here, I'll link to a couple other heat embossing videos, and I hope to see you again soon with another video. Thank you again for watching.